Welcome to the Wakefield Doctrine, the theory of Clarks, Scotts, and Rogers. And that's probably as far as I should go, because this is take 9 in a course of a day of takes, which some of them didn't work because I got interrupted. Others didn't work because I lost the power of speech. And still others didn't work because I listened to myself for a second. And it's never really a good idea when a Clark sets out to do something like a videotape of themselves talking. Two of Clark's favorite things are the sound of their own recorded voice and the photo, which you don't quite get unless you're looking up at the mirror here to the right. But Clarks are stubborn if we are nothing else. So let's get right to the topics. Couple of good comments in the course of the last week since we last did this. Stephanie and Christy, to wit. And Stephanie's comment, in fact, is what prompted me to do one of the posts that you'll never hear. And it had to do with, she was talking about finding it interesting, the doctrine, and going to be reading those posts to try and learn about it. And my head immediately swelled up and my face fell, because I love the posts. They're the fun of this thing, they're the conversation, and they're also a chance to get other insights from people other than yours truly. However, organizationally speaking and etymologically speaking, they probably need more of something. So I thought, what kind of points can we give? And I always give the same advice at that point. I'll say, hey, call us on Saturday night. We can probably shortcut a lot of the understanding. The thing is about the doctrine is the people we're getting are the exceptional ones to begin with. There's an intellectual Darwinianism at work here. My writing skills and organizational skills are causing a certain degree of selectivity? I don't know, choosiness. Yes, the doctrine is an example of Darwinian choosiness, which means to say that the people who make it through the doctrine and get it enough to be able to enjoy it enough to write a comment are exceptional. And probably Clarks, and certainly if not Clarks, are Scotts and or Rogers with strong secondary Clark-like aspects. So I just wanted to give a couple of shortcut pointers, I guess, things that you'll learn by reading the doctrine posts, but sometimes they get, it's the order of things. There are some critical things that everybody who's commenting already gets, obviously, worldviews, 3 personality types, characteristics thereof. But there are some finer points that help eliminate some of the confusion. The old one used to be, readers would write in and say, well, I think I'm pretty sure I'm a Clark, but sometimes it seems like I'm a Roger. I guess the doctrine doesn't really work for me. We don't hear that as much. So maybe the writing is changing a little bit. My response to that used to be, well, don't worry about that, because we are predominantly one type, but we have the other two. I'm a Clark, but I always have a Rogerian and a Scotian aspect. Maybe there's a little bit of updating going on that I'm not noticing, sitting in this pile of words and stuff, is that the thing I notice that we do get in that regard, the blurring of types, is that I'll hear somebody say, Michelle may have said that, or Cindy or somebody, about, hey, I seem to be a Clark Roger or a Scott Roger or something like that. That is very telling, actually, because the former thing is still true. You retain the other aspects, but what we've come to learn about the doctrine, and just in the last year or so, is that the role of a secondary aspect is significant. Secondary aspect is simply defined as, I'll use myself as an example. I'm a Clark, obviously, therefore I'm an outsider. Okay, we all know what that means. I have a strong secondary Scotian aspect. Now, what that means is that what it doesn't mean is I don't jump between the worlds of a Scott and a Clark. Not in that sense. I don't change. What it does mean to have a secondary aspect is that my solutions to problems are wider in options than simply a Clark, if somebody were just a Clark. Let's rephrase that. As a Clark, in certain situations where problem solving is the central issue, my Scotian aspect will make itself known there. It'll color my decisions. In fact, you might even say that my Scotian aspect enhances the range of choices that I have as a Clark. And if I were a Roger or a Scott, same thing applies. Secondary aspect does that. The degree, it varies. Now, I want to say one thing about secondary and tertiary aspects. It's not a forced proportion. It's not like I'm 75% Clark and 20% Scott, and therefore I must be 5%. That it doesn't work that way, apparently. In fact, it doesn't even require that you have a secondary or tertiary aspect of any kind of significance. I know people, I have friends who are simply Scotts, simply Rogers, and you would know yourself. You'd meet them and you say, oh, okay, there's a Scott, huh? And for reasons that are beyond the scope of this here episode, we'll leave it at that. So that's the story of the secondary and tertiary aspects, and it's kind of interesting, or I'm finding it interesting myself right now, is that has replaced one of the I don't even want to call it misunderstandings. It's a understanding, meaning you understand it, but it needs adjustment, which is only done by fuller understanding of the way the doctrine works. The other thing, and I'll be cutting this thing off soon, the other thing prompted by the comments I got, I think it might have been Christy, was the question we sometimes get is, hey, is that a real Scotian thing to do? Occupations. And I think somebody mentioned police. Or maybe I mentioned police. That's right. In my first take, I passed the cop sitting by the side of the road, and that prompted my ever active brain to go to police. What is the demographic of police in general? And the answer is Scott. And then I moved on to firefighters. They're a good pairing. They're a good illustration, not only of the idea that some personality types are better suited to occupations, but also that it still doesn't mean every cop is a Scott or every fireman is a Roger. Clark's a fireman, Clark's a police. It's just that some occupations are more suited to a certain personality type or worldview. Having said that, though, the idea is it doesn't matter. You don't look at it in terms of, is this a Clark-like thing to do? The saying around here is everybody does everything one time or another, which is just a way of saying don't get hung up on, does this match? You look at it from either your perspective, if you're thinking about yourself or talking about yourself, your personality type, or if you're looking at somebody else. And we'll do that in this example that will now ensue. You look at the personality type and you infer their worldview and see what that tells you about how they view that occupation. So we look at police. Okay, why do we think it's a very Scotian profession? Well, we look at what the job entails. It entails wearing a uniform, okay. It entails being in an organized group. It entails driving cars real fast. It entails taking guns out and maybe shooting off guns. Your cars make a lot of noise with sirens, and you get to capture people. You put all of that together, and it comes out. Predator. A predator makes a great cop. They range the civic savannah and capture the people they're supposed to capture most of the time, and protect and serve. Very Scotian. So okay, that's what we mean by inferring from what we know either about the target or analyzing the job. Okay, we know about the job and the requirements, and then we impose that on the worldview that we're talking about. So there's a match with the Scots. Again, Clark's cops, Rogers cops. Then you move over to, and then really telling, and then we're almost done with this thing. Really telling was when we moved over to firefighters. Okay, uniforms, organized group, active. They're both dangerous professions, high levels of excitement. But firefighters are predominantly Rogerian. And when you look at the difference between what a cop does, the world of a cop and the world of a firefighter, the first thing that jumped out at me was that Scots deal with people, Rogers deal with things. Not only do Rogers deal with things, buildings and cars and things that catch fire, but their main task is to conserve. They're looking to put fires out, prevent fires. They're preserving the world in a structural, not the people. Well, that comes into play, but you get the idea that they're out there to protect the city, which is constructed. Big difference, big difference. Scots don't care about stuff. Things in Scots' worlds, inanimate objects, are to be jumped over, stood on, or shot at. So, they like to chase the prey. They like the things that move, that fight back, that resist. Rogers will look at things and see the beauty in preserving. So that's why we go with the Rogerian demographic as being the highest match on the firefighting profession. The other things, you look at the fraternal organization of a fire department versus a police department. I think we'll all agree that you look at the firefighters, and they do wear funny clothes sometimes, and they love their hats. I mean, you look at cops, and cops have hats, firefighters have hats, but there's something inherently different about the place that a hat has. This is now, we've moved into a higher level of discussion of the Wakefield Doctrine here. For any of you new readers, don't be concerned if you are scratching your head and wondering why I'm waxing philosophic about the place of hats between personality types. But the friends of the doctrine and all will all sort of recognize that, yeah, Rogers, they love these hats. But you look at firefighters in the fire station, and you look at cops in the whatever they call it, day room. And one's a pack, one's a herd. Clearly. So that's a little bit of the kind of thing that I know will help anybody out there putting the pieces of the Wakefield Doctrine together. And the last thing, impromptu thing, is Molly said something in a comment today that made me think about maybe we should put a warning on these things, because the fact is, as you learn to recognize Clark, Scots, and Rogers, you'll be delighted and amazed that people who have never read, to your knowledge, the Wakefield Doctrine behave just like they're supposed to. I mean, they do a great, everybody out there will do a great Rogers, Clark, or Scott. In fact, I would wager now that if you're looking around at a spouse, especially kids secondarily, is that they will tend to do the, whatever their type is, better than, say, friends will and co-workers. I'm not sure why that is. We'll figure it out later. But the warning will be, when you start this path, from our experience so far, you can't stop seeing them, which is, I think it's great. Because, when Cindy and the group on Saturday nights have talked about fluency in the Wakefield Doctrine, and we look at it as the more you know about the three personality types, to wit, the more you know about the worldviews that they represent, the quicker you'll recognize the personality type. So that's it. I'm running long. I will try to get this in tomorrow, and I will see everybody on Saturday night. Bye.